It is uh, May the 5th, 2020, and the last couple months, we've been having this virus during this time period called the coronavirus, and it's been affecting people. Schools have been shut down. Um, Churches have been prohibited from worshiping. Services have been closed. Jobs have been neutralized. People are not able to get out and go to parks, go to recreational areas. There have been quarantine restrictions in neighborhoods. So today I just want to talk about some thoughts on evangelism during uncertain times, and it can apply to what we are going through right now, but it can also apply to other things as well. But these are just good things for food for thought when it comes to this. Now, most churches are dying out each year. We lose more churches than we bring in. I mean, more people. And the simple fact is, this epidemic is serious. Like the struggles we're facing right now and the struggles we have faced in the past, um, a wide range of things from economy issues to viruses to war. There's been a lot of issues that have gone on in the United States of America. One of the serious issues of our time in our culture is the dying out of the church in America. As if with any virus to date or crisis, the culture of the death of God's kingdom in the United States is a serious thing. Did you know 70 to 80% of churches are in plateau or decline in the United States of America? And I'm not just pulling this out of my head, folks. I'm not just pulling this out of my head. Please understand this. If you go to the magazine, The Atlantic, read this article. I have the link listed below this quote. The article is titled America's Epidemic of Empty Churches. It says many of our nation's churches can no longer afford to maintain the structures. Most churches are closing down, closing their doors. And this was before the coronavirus. Please understand that. This quote says 6,000 to 10,000 churches die each year in America, and that number is likely to grow. So that's a large number here. It's not saying 5 or 10 or 15. It's saying 6,000 to 10,000 churches die each year in America. Not 6,000, 10,000 churches are growing. New churches are springing up each year. It's saying they are dying out. That's the number. This quote also says 70% of citizens still claim to be Christians, but they don't think going to church matters. It's more of a touchy-feely generation, unfortunately, where religious organizations that are taught in the Bible do not seem to matter. It says most denominations are declining as a share of the overall population, and donations to congregations have been falling for decades. So if you want to read this article, the link is right there. It's a good read right there, good read. So I'll give you a chance just to peruse that link just for a GIF, just to look at it if you want to write it down. Okay, so here's some other issues I would like to share. These statistics also include the Church of Christ, the Lord's Church. Here are two quotes. From 2006 to 2016, about 58 congregations closed each year. And you can see the link below if you would like to read more about this quote. The source link. It says 58 congregations closed each year for 10 years from 2006 to 2016. And the overwhelming, from this quote, and the overwhelming majority of churches that remain are what? Are ginormous. What does it say here? Are small. How small is small? How small is this quote referring to? Well, the average attendance among the nation's 11,965 churches of Christ. Yes, that's all we got left. 11,965 churches. It says is 94 of people that claim to be members of a church. 94, well, that's not too bad. Well, let's continue reading. And 54% on average attend. 54%. Let me restate this. 54% average just 34 people in the pews on Sunday. So congregations claim to have 94 people, but guess how much show up? half percentile is only 34 people come to church on Sunday. So the church is not doing too dandy, is it? Now, this is a kind of biggie thing I wanted to share right here, but it's a good sheet. It really details a lot of signs of the times we're going through. Now, the virus, the past, the present, and the future of pandemics. Now, please understand, this isn't the first virus we've had. We've had, in 2009, the H1N1, the swine flu. Now, 2020, we have the coronavirus. 1918 to 1920, 3-year pandemic. We had the flu pandemic, kind of redundant right there, but for 3 years, and it killed 50 million people. It killed people all over the United States of America. Houses were empty. So many people were dying. Houses were being emptied out. So this COVID-19, as it is abbreviated, is nothing new. Other viruses will come. And this virus is expected, not saying it will, but people are predicting it'll come every winter now, since it's had its roots in our culture. And people, once the virus is there, it's there. It's supposed to come back every winter. Let me state this very seriously. Let's look at the silver lining of this rainstorm. The best time to reach people, the best time to touch people's lives, are not when it's dancing babies and rainbows and lollipops and birds singing and everything is peachy. The best time to reach people are the hardest times. I have been turning on my TV to watch the news, and guess what I've been seeing? Billy Graham, he got the idea. He runs TV ads. During this time period, I've never seen more TV ads by Billy Graham about the sinner's prayer. It's like on all the time during this crisis, because he understands this rule. The best time to reach people are when they are hurting, when they need hope, when they are struggling. That's when they need that lifeline thrown. But that's the only thing I've been seeing, in large part. We need to be doing a better job of taking the most of this opportunity to care for those in need, to understand that the Christian obligation is to be kind and caring and helpful during this time, but also to share Jesus Christ. I've seen another silver lining. This is amazing. Have you been to YouTube or Twitter lately? Have you been to Facebook lately? Social media, streaming services are at an all-time high. Where services used to have like 5 people watching, they got 20 people watching or 30 people watching. It's insane. More and more people are tuning in to church services, to videos. So this is a good time. I mean, so many things are happening. Bible discussions, streaming videos on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. This is the best time to reach people. Also, there's online Bible studies taking place. You can go to Zoom or Skype. There's a lot of things taking place with that as well. Great time to reach people. So when people say, I can't do evangelism right now because there's a pandemic and we're supposed to be 6 feet away from each other. That's what the government says. And we can't go to malls, they're closed. We can't go to college campuses, they're closed. We can't go door knocking because people will be offended because they're trying to not get sick. I can't do evangelism. Social media, now is the time. Now is the perfect time to be doing this. And the great thing about this, more people are likely to tune in to social media things, sharing scripture, having Bible studies online where people can watch videos, sharing correspondence courses, inviting people to read an article, on internet radio, whatever. The best time to be doing this. The best time always, this is the evangelistic rule right here, to reach people are when they're hurting, discouraged, struggling. And people are isolated, they're hurting, they don't have their jobs, they're stuck at home, They're fearful, some of them. Life is hard. Some of them have been fired. Life is difficult. Now they need the hope. Now is the best time to share it. I found this to be a powerful method as well. You can do this, and this is evangelism. And you can do it whether there's a virus or not, whether you're housebound or not. Google Ads. It's about $1 to $2 to get a click on an ad. Facebook ads, it's about 30 cents, much cheaper to run an ad on Facebook. Guess what? YouTube ads, even cheaper. Good time to promote your Bible study courses, share salvation, share themes of the true church, share your Bible materials, promote your sites, your social media videos, your articles, your communities. Now is the time to be doing these type of activities. And guess what? I spend $25 on Facebook sharing the plan of salvation. I get 100 clicks of people being exposed to the truth who go to my site and are exposed to the plan of salvation. I just shared the Jesus Christ with 100 people for $25. For a pizza and a Coke, I brought Jesus to 100 people. And thousands of other people were exposed. That's cool stuff. Advertising is amazing. I encourage you to look into that. It's really cheap, especially with Facebook and YouTube. But this is what's taking place with the pandemic. People are housebound. I think it's about 70,000 people have died so far, tragically. These are scary times here in the United States of America. Let me talk about what the government has done before the virus, though. Some scary things that are taking place now. Before the virus, nurses and religious hospitals were required to support abortions, required to do things they believed were ideologically wrong. They were forced to do it. Bakers, photographers were sued if they didn't participate in gay weddings or things they fundamentally thought was amoral. School teachers were required to teach liberal ideologies. I have a friend who doesn't like that. They're trying to force her to do things that are against her values. And kids at school are required to learn evolution, that homosexual marriage is great and all that, and it's normal. That transgenderism, a guy wearing a dress, is fine and dandy. It's not a mental illness if a man thinks he's a woman, if a man has a penis and thinks he's a girl and goes into women's bathrooms and locker rooms. Well, that's just great. Teaching kids that, having drag queens come to the schools. This is what's taking place in America in this day and age. They're teaching them sadomasochism, for goodness sake, in high school, and they're passing out condoms in elementary school. So this is the times we're living in, where I got chewed out when I was in high school for having a Bible with me. Where prayer is discouraged, where religion is discouraged in schools, but secularism, atheism, agnosticism, paganism, even in Islam, that's fine. This is the signs of the times. Even religiously speaking, in Canada, it is deemed hate speech to say certain things about certain groups. It's called hate speech. This guy called David Lynn, a preacher in Toronto, was arrested for preaching a sermon about homosexuality. It was called hate speech. The ACLU is trying to make such religious speeches. If you say something about a group that is amoral, pedophilia, necrophilia, bestiality, homosexuality, incest, polygamy, whatever, and it hurts somebody's feelings, because that's the culture we live in, heaven forbid somebody gets their feelings hurt. It's called hate speech. And ACLU, in this case called Gillies versus Davis, Davis is a preacher, and he preached in America about homosexuality, and Gillies had a problem with that. And the ACLU brought this to the Supreme Court to try to forbid people to say certain things about certain people from the Bible what the Bible teaches on certain things. They try to bring it before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court overruled it. They're trying to bring it back. It's just a matter of time, my friends, just a matter of time. Now, this is what the government's doing during the virus. They're arresting preachers who lead assemblies. There's a preacher up near here at this denomination called the River. Not a fan. It's very occultish, very scary somewhat, thuggish. But guess what? The preacher got together with 100 of his congregation, and he got arrested and fined. When the government forbids people to meet together to worship, they're breaking up services. Even if people meet outside in Alabama, a bunch of cars in a church parking lot were meeting together for a service. I believe it was in Alabama. And the police fined the preacher and broke up the assembly, even though everybody was in their car. Yet abortion clinics are still open. Got to kill that baby. Got to do it now. Can't wait a month later. You can't give it up for adoption. Liquor stores are still open. You know, places where you go, those green leaf places to get that buzz is still open, but churches are closed. Signs of the times. If you do research about Russia, horrible, sad things are taking place in Russia. They're going back to the catacombs. That's a word that is used in the New Testament. Christians during the Roman era were killed, flayed alive, mutilated, castrated, butchered, set on fire like human torches, and they went into the catacombs, graveyards, to worship God in secret so they wouldn't be caught. In Russia, guess what they're having to do? The preachers are undercover. They cannot be known as preachers. Saints are arrested and fined if they're caught worshiping God. The Bible is banned. Children are encouraged to out their parents. Neighbors to report on families. Church services are regulated or restricted according to what the government says. And they have they're a specific religion. But if you differ from that, you're in big, big trouble. You can have your property confiscated. So they have front organizations. They funnel money through. They hide in secret. They meet at night in the quiet to worship God, secretly and in private, closed-off places. Why am I pointing this out about Russia? Because there's going to come a time and place we get the wrong people in power long enough to get enough done against those of faith, and people in the liberal ideologies are very anti-Christian. There will come a time when we will be in that place. I mean, just look at Hollywood. They degrade religion. They promote homosexuality, pornography, intolerance for moral principles. They indoctrinate your little ones with liberal biases and views. Even the Disney Channel. It's about, two little girls in love with each other. Homosexual boy running around. And media is sensationalism. And YouTube and Facebook and posts and videos and movies on TV and TV shows, even the news, is about titillating people. It's about instant gratification. You know what happened in BC 2264 to 404 AD? Romans had a theater of arenas throughout the Roman Empire where games of blood and combat and executions took place. What is TV? What is the main theme on most TV shows? It's not love and families. It's violence. In Rome, during this time period, the temples were places of sex and debauchery, of the most vilest sexual degradative acts, and even castrations. It was profoundly debased. Yet we have more doors open to violence and sex more than ever. All you have to do is turn on your phone And you can watch bestiality, necrophilia, incest. You can have anything at your fingertips. You can watch adultery. You can watch the most vilest things, snuff films, and you can watch the TV shows, the most grotesque, violent shows out there. And just if you go watch enough TV shows, you'll see men kissing, women kissing, even on public cable shows. You'll see that. You'll see nudity sometimes, and you will definitely see violence. They're promoting a homosexual agenda a lot on TV, and they degrade religion. He's always a nutball. He's always the wacko. He's always the greedy villain. They're the preacher, the Christian. But the homosexual is always sophisticated and wonderful. Even though God condemns it, they promote it. They promote abortion. They promote all these ideologies, and they degrade the principles of the Bible. This is a sign of the times and the culture. We're in a trigger-happy, hypersensitive culture where if you have a Bible sticker on your car, you offend somebody. If you have a Christmas tree up, you offend somebody. If you have a cross or you're walking around campus with the Bible, you offend somebody. Everybody's so offended. Everybody's so sensitive. They need safe places on college campuses now and dogs to pet to feel safe. In these safe zones. People are so traumatized over every little thing. You know, in the 1940s, 1930s, 1950s, men were men. 18-year-olds were grown men. Nowadays, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 30-year-olds live with their parents, with their kids, unmarried, living off the government too many of the time. Back then, in the 1950s, people thought with their left brain. They made decisions for what was best due to reason and logic. There's some interesting polls. I encourage you to Google this, to research this. Generation Y, Generation X. They primarily make their decisions on what feels right, what meets with their mood and their expectations. When people are governed by their right brain, their emotions, then they're not going to be following God. They're going to be following the crowd, following sensationalism. And that is where this country is heading, further and further down the rabbit hole. People in America, comparatively to third world countries, are rich. Even the poorest of Americans, they have TVs, cell phones, ACs, internet, a means to get food, food banks, charities, cheap fast food at McDonald's. You can get a 50-cent hamburger. People with disabilities have help, and single mothers have welfare support. There is so much to help people that even the poorest of us live like kings compared to those in third world countries. No one should say anybody's starving in America when there's food banks and there are free access. Even with the coronavirus, there's all these schools are having open areas where people can pick up food for free. There's so many venues out there to help people out. We live in a culture of instant gratification and of luxury, even the poorest of the poor. They live in nice apartments comparatively to the third world countries. They have TVs and cable. They have cell phones. When people have these things, life can distract them from Jesus. I want to say the simple truth. America, I love America. God bless America. And Europe are wealthy comparatively to other nations, and they're comfortable because they got instant everything, microwavable dinners. Everything is so easy to access. Life is so comfortable compared to what other people are experiencing. And guess what? The wealthiest countries in this globe right now are dying out spiritually. That would include these two countries. Seldom do I see Christians, young or old, even a lot of preachers sharing Jesus Christ on Facebook or other media outlets. It blows my mind. American preachers, friends on Facebook. Now, I know of some amazing preachers who are doing that, but they're the minority of the minority here. The majority of Christians and preachers, young and old, in the Lord's church will share their dog, their cute little puppy, their new house, or the pictures of their wife. Nothing wrong with that. Or their car. They love their car. They'll share everything under the sun, their hobbies, their weight loss, their food they cooked for dinner, everything under the sun, their friends, the vacations they took, but they never shared Jesus Christ. What does Matthew 6:21 say? Matthew 6:21. It says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If we value Jesus and his word more than anything in this world, should we not our heart be into that? If our heart is into that, we'll be sharing it. It'll be exciting news. We'll want other people to hear about it. It'll be more important than talking about our keto diet. It'll be more important than talking about, we just renovated, landscaped our yard. Oh, we went to Carrabba's today with our aunt and uncle. How many Christians actually post Bible verses and share Bible posts and are interested in talking about spiritual things on Facebook? Yet saints in third world countries, and I admire this deeply, in India, Philippines, Africa, Islamic states, are always posting scripture. They're always sharing with me, and I'm always seeing it online. I got a lot of friends from these areas. They're always sharing with me Bible teachings. They're always sharing on their profile evangelism work they're doing, their baptisms. They're actually doing evangelism. Most Christians in the Lord's church in America are not. That's why we're dying out. In part. That's part of the reason. If people that are struggling and hurting, guess what they're doing? They're sharing Jesus Christ. Throughout history, from the early Christian church rising to Constantine, to the medieval ages, to the persecutions of England during the Reformation, religion has always grown. And let me recap this. Religion has always grown under the pressure and trial of adversity. God warned Israel of ease and comfort in the Bible in Deuteronomy 8:3-14. And we're going to get into that. God warned them that if you have ease and comfort, you may become apathetic and spiritually regress. Ease and comfort, wealth and success are the building blocks not to spirituality, but it's counter opposite. It's too many times the case. Yet the saints have been persecuted again and again throughout history, the most grotesque ways possible. Children, wives, husbands murdered for their faith. And on their dying breath, they confessed Jesus Christ. They were not going to give in, give way, give out, give up. And the church, despite its persecution, did the work, did evangelism, was earnest, was on fire, shared Jesus. They didn't have Facebook posts back then, but guess what? They went around and they shared the Lord. Simple fact is, when the early Christians were persecuted in Acts 11, 19, and 20, the earliest mention of what happened to the church, they spread the gospel. Nothing gets people moving like fire under one's seat, so to speak. I want to encourage you. I just got done reading this. Google, and it's free online. You can download it. You can read it online. Google Traditions and History of the Early Churches of Christ in Central Europe by Hans Grimm. Beautiful work about how the Lord's church was around from 350 AD to, he goes all the way to the 1800s, about the Lord's church. And he talks about the church being persecuted again and again and again, all the way up to near the 1970. And guess what happened to Lord's Church when that happened in 1970? What do you think happened? When they had peace and rest and comfort, that's when they started dying out in Central Europe. In a time of peace, the church in Europe began to die, and guess what? We have been dying for years. For a quarter of a century, we are dying out. What has been happening in the last 50 years? Peace, comfort, no real persecution, not yet. What I've been mentioning is just a drop in the bucket, but it's not real persecution. That, my friends, is coming. Read this book. It's a great book. It was written by a German who was persecuted in Germany, and it's an incredible read. Just nonstop, hundreds of years, the Lord's Church has been around, and it gives beautiful stories about people sharing Christ, going to the fire pile to be burned alive, and they professed God is love. He who loves is of God, and was willing to share Christ no matter what. So church apathy is taking place, and things need to change. And things will change. I'm just giving you a glimpse of what will take place, and just to share the silver lining. I encourage you to read we just mentioned this, that Israel was warned not to become apathetic when good things started happening. Look at what happened. When Israel was humbled and disciplined of God, they were dependent on him. When Israel was prosperous, gratified, filled with pleasure and distractions, titillation, satiation, they forgot God. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. I'll read to verse 14. God tells the Israelites through Moses. Moses says, he humbled you, referring to God, and let you be hungry, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that you might understand that man doesn't live on bread alone. Moses is saying God humbled you, and he made you dependent on him for food. He made life hard, and he made you look to him for your resources, so that you would understand man doesn't live on bread alone, but you live on the words of God. Because from God, he gives you all things, including food. He sustains you. Verse 4, your clothing did not wear out. Moses, again, saying, you need to depend on God. God was taking care of you. Nor did your feet swell those 40 years. God put them in a wilderness. They were struggling, yet he took care of them. Verse 5, thus you are to know in your heart that the Lord your God was disciplining you just as a man disciplines his son. Yeah, discipline's not fun. But my parents disciplined me as a child, and it made me better. You don't want little hooligans running around, lying, cheating, stealing. Discipline helps train people. And God brings trials in our own lives to help us become who we are supposed to be. Verse 6, therefore you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and to fear him. Moses is warning them. Stay dependent on God. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep following him. Verse 7, for the Lord your God is bringing you, now this is important here, he's bringing you into a land of brooks of water, of fountains and springs, flowing forth in valleys and hills. That sounds nice. Kind of sounds like the good old USA, doesn't it? A good land. A land of brooks and waters, of fountains and springs, flowing forth in valleys and hills. A beautiful, prosperous land. You know, here in America, we can go to the grocery store and we get instant food. In Russia, you have to stand in a line for hours just to get a loaf of bread. We got it good here, folks. We don't have to hope we can find an egg carton or hope we'll find some milk when we go to the grocery store. It's there. We get it, we go. We are in a land of milk and honey. God's warning these people. I'm going to give you a land of waters and springs of abundance, of hills and valleys. Verse 8, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. He says, I'm going to give you lots of good stuff. Food, beauty, resources, nourishment, a land that is flourishing. Verse 9, a land where you will eat without scarcity. It's funny, I know a lot of people who are poor and they're overweight. People aren't starving to death in America. They can get food. Even if it's not the most healthiest foods, they can go to a fast food restaurant, 50 cents, get a hamburger, and be fed. It's hard to be, and so many charities are giving food for folks. No reason no one should be starving in America. Now, maybe some folks are in certain areas, but there's no excuse for that. Not with the resources this government and this country are giving folks. This is a land where you will eat without scarcity, kind of paralleled with our country. He's saying you're going to have lots of stuff. You're going to have food. You're going to have abundance. And this is a powerful part of this, in which you will not lack anything. I'm going to give you everything you want, everything you need. A land whose stones are iron, again, good minerals, abundance, wealth, and out of whose hills you can dig copper. When you've eaten and you're satisfied, verse 10, you shall bless the Lord your God for the land which he has given you. He's saying you're going to eat, you're going to be satisfied. Remember to give thanks. Remember to be grateful. Then he warns them in verse 11, beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping the commandments and the ordinances and his statutes, which I am commanding you today. He says, God's saying, I'm going to give you all this good stuff. And then he says, don't forget me. Verse 12, otherwise, this is the clicher, when you have eaten and are satisfied and have built good houses and live in them, when you got all the good stuff, you got nice houses like most Americans, most church Christians do here in the USA. And when you have herds and your flocks multiply, and you have silver and gold, and they multiply, and all that you have multiplies, when you're blessed, then in your heart you will become proud, and you'll forget the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. God's saying, don't forget me. Otherwise, if you're not willing to follow my statutes, if you forget me, because of all the good things I'm giving you, flocks, silver, gold, herds, good housing, when you're satisfied, when you eat, when life is wonderful, if you have all these things and you don't follow him and they distract you from him, God is warning him. He's saying, warning them, beware. Beware. When we have abundance, when we have blessings, it is easy to forget God. It's easy to not go to church on Sunday and stay and watch a football game or hang out or sleep in or go to parties in this culture saturated with pleasure and a me-centered mentality where everything revolves around the almighty I in most people's respect. Again, very different from the 1950s where things revolved around other people. It was more community-based, family-based, faith-based. It's easy to do these things. Again, I give you this warning. I'm not a prophet nor a son of a prophet, but it is circular. Throughout history, this has always taken place, especially when the moral fabric has started to dissolve. The family unit is starting to become less and less defined by what the Bible says and more by what the government says. Things start to break apart. The glue that holds the country together is morality, faith, and family. And when the government is undermining these things, it's just a matter of time, my friends. Persecution in a country and culture must come for things to change. Remember what was taking place in Acts. People were being saved in Acts chapter 2. Were estimated there could be there are thousands and thousands and thousands of Christians in Jerusalem. Keep in mind, 3,000 were baptized. 3,000. And they were so numerous, they were meeting in the temple, in Solomon's colonnade to worship, a place in the Jewish temple. They were huge. The Jerusalem church was huge. They were sitting around there in Jerusalem. What took place in Acts 8, verse 1? It says Saul, this guy, before he became the Apostle Paul, he was Saul, he was a murderer, he was killing Christians. He just killed the first martyr, Stephen, who was a deacon and a servant of Christ. It says Saul, in hearty agreement with putting him, Stephen, to death. And on that day, great persecution began against the church in Jerusalem. And they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judah and Samaria, except the apostles. Some devout men buried Stephen. So basically, Paul is dragging women and men off to death. Kids were separated from the parents, and he was killing folks. It talks about that in another area of the scripture. People secretly got out and mourned Stephen and buried him. First martyr who said, "Father, forgive them who were stoning him," which is amazing. Verse 3, but Saul began ravaging the church, entering house after house, dragging off men and women. He would put them in prison. Therefore, those who had been scattered went about and preached the word. Persecution caused what? Them to be scattered, and what did they do? They shared Jesus. They were on fire. They preached the word. Verse 5, Philip, another Christian there, went down to the city of Samaria and began proclaiming Christ to them in Samaria. Persecutions have a purpose, my friends. Not fun, but it serves a point. Acts 11, verse 19-20 further reiterates this. In Antioch, the church in Antioch, the Christians were scattered because of the persecution that arose over Stephen the martyr there. It traveled far they traveled, those who were persecuted, as far as Phoenicia and Cyprus and Antioch, speaking the word to no one except Jews. But some of them, men from Cyprus and Cyrene, went to Antioch and began speaking to the Greeks as well, proclaiming the good news about the Lord Jesus. So persecution did what? It caused people to spread out and share the word. What are we doing in America? We're not persecuted. We're not running around sharing Christ. We're sitting at home, sharing Facebook posts about, a cat video we liked, or our favorite football team. We're not even sharing him in our rooms or in our offices on social media, let alone abroad from neighbor to neighbor. These folks were persecuted and they were active. Let me state this. Throughout history, even in our most modern times, persecution has caused growth of Christianity. There's one thing I didn't put here about China. China had believers. So the China government thought, hey, I'm going to disperse all these Chinese people all across the landscape here, and surely their faith will die out. Guess what happened? These little clusters, these little pockets of small Chinese families just kept doing the Christian work and just started their own work wherever they were at, and their work grew and grew. So basically, they just spread out the seed across the soils, and they did nothing, even though they were persecuting the Chinese people. The quotes here I'm going to give right now are at this link right here if you'd like to check them out. Since the 1979 revolution, Christians in Iran have also found themselves pressured, coerced, imprisoned, threatened with death, or executed. And yet, drumroll here, Iran has the largest number of believers to have embraced the Christian faith from across the Islamic world. But they're persecuted. They should be quiet. They should stop. When people are persecuted, what they hold most dear becomes even more dear. Their faith. And they are willing to die for that. People are being crucified. Understand that in third world countries in the name of Islam. Churches are being burnt down. Women are being mutilated. Children are being slain because of faith. Yet they're willing to die for it, and they're sharing it, even at the risk of their own life, because if you share Jesus, you get put to death in Islamic states. Yet we have no risk of death in America or Europe, Britain, France, Germany, and we're crickets. That's what we are. All I hear is crickets from most of the saints. There are exceptions to the rule, but the majority are quiet, because if they weren't, we would be growing in these countries and we're dying out. I would not say it's a tall tale sign here. We'll be gone in the next 70, 80 years at the rate we're going. Please understand, things must change. Persecution may be the cure, even though it is not a delightful medicine to take. Another quote. While in the 1800s, Japan was home to hundreds of thousands of Christians, 1800s here, most were killed or forced to reconvert or hide their faith when the emperor banned Christian faith here. It was only after World War II that some of Japan's secret Christians emerged and a small number of churches were opened. So the religious faith thrived under persecution. Yet after World War II, Japan secret Christians were allowed to emerge, and a small number of Christians churches that were out there, they're opened up. Guess what took place after that? To this day, the number of believers in Japan is a fraction of what it was before. Freedom, comfort, ease, tolerance equals longevity down the road, death for the church. That Japan is just a fraction of what was before because of Christian tolerance. So there's going to come a time, it has always come throughout history. Keep in mind that Christians during the apostolic age, the apostles, when they were elderly and dying out, they all were martyred except for John. And he was rumored to have been boiled in hot oil. He survived and he was exiled to the island of Patmos. And then there was a persecution on the church by the emperor gods, quote unquote, for about 500 years. And that book I told you that was written by Hans Grimm, he writes that the persecution kept on in the European countries till around 1600. And the churches thrived under persecution. They died out, they were annihilated, people were killed, but that fanned the flames of zeal to keep what they believed was true alive. So let me say, no matter what must come, we must stay the course. Proverbs 28 verse 1. What does Proverbs 28 verse 1? This is a great verse to know. It says, the wicked man flees, although no one pursues him. And if you have your faith only in yourself, then when your self collapses, when you can't rely on yourself anymore, you become a fearful thing, a wretched man. The wicked man flees, although no one pursues him, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. When we have faith in God that he's directing our steps, that the providence of heaven is behind us, it can make us bold to share Christ, even at the cost of our lives. We know we have our souls. The wicked man flees, although no one pursues him, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. We must be bold, my friends, no matter the cost. And we must understand, even if the government bans religious meetings, as they are doing now, but they ban it when there is no virus. They say it is hate speech, talk about things in the Bible. When things get a little more difficult, we must have this rule, this mantra, this motto. God's law is above man's law. Acts 5 verse 17 says this. Acts chapter 5 verse 17 through 29. But the high priest rose up. You can let the context, the apostles are preaching. It's near after the resurrection of Jesus. They're preaching the good news. It says the high priest, those people, and they're preaching, guess where they're preaching? In Jerusalem, in the temple, where the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the high priest put Jesus to death, betrayed him, and had him arrested and judged and got him put to death. They're in that very temple, not too far from when Jesus rose from the grave. And it says here, the high priest rose up along with all his associates, all those who helped murder Christ or were connected to this in some way. That is a sect of the Sadducees. The Sadducees and the Pharisees were anti-Christ. It says they were all filled with jealousy when they heard the message. They laid their hands on the apostles and put them in public jail. Would you preach Jesus even if that meant being put in jail? Most people in this day and age in the country of the USA and Europe won't preach Jesus regardless. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the gates of the prison, and taking them out, he said this powerful word, "Go, stand, and speak to the people in the temple the whole message of this life." All of the message of God has been revealed to the apostles. People are saying, I have heard this said. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what the revelation of God fully, utterly was. The whole message was revealed to them. The angel said, speak it. Go back to the temple where you were arrested, where the people that had killed Christ are at, and speak again. Verse 21. Upon hearing this, they entered into the temple about daybreak and began to preach, began to teach. Now that takes some boldness, my friends. Verse 25, but someone came and reported to them, the men who were put in prison are standing in the temple and teaching the people. Then the captain went along with the officers and proceeded to bring them back. The officers and the captain are the temple guards, people that were ruled by the religious leaders, kind of like police in the temple, and the religious leaders told them what to do. They went to bring them back, but without violence, the temple guard and the officers, for they were afraid of the people that they might be stoned. People were listening to them about this message. They didn't want to get those feathers ruffled. Verse 27, when they brought them, they stood, the apostles, when these temple guards, these officials, these quote policemen, when they brought them, they stood them before the council. Again, the religious leaders, that's the council. The high priest questioned them, saying, we gave you strict orders not to continue to teach in his name. And you have filled Jerusalem with his teaching and intend to make this man's blood be upon us. And his blood was upon them because they killed him. They didn't like them talking about Jesus, the man they murdered. Verse 29, but Peter and the apostles answered, we must obey God rather than men. If there ever comes a time when we cannot preach, we cannot go to church, we cannot study the Bible, we cannot have a Bible, we cannot have faith, we can have our moral convictions, we cannot believe or say or think certain things, otherwise it's hate. We must understand whatever law tries to bind us, muzzle us, stop us, we must have this statement in our hearts and minds. We must obey God rather than men. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up here. But the persecution makes a strong Christian. If you go to the gym, the difficulty of lifting that weight makes you stronger. The pressure, the discomfort. Well, when you have pressure and discomfort upon your spiritual being, and you have to push against that, it makes you stronger as well. And strong Christians make for strong churches. You get enough strong folks together, men and women and children, who have undergone persecution in an assembly, that assembly becomes strong as well. So Romans chapter 5, verse 3. A beautiful thing of what's going to take place. I'm not a prophet nor a son of a prophet, but I tell you the truth. If you read throughout history, this is circular. Persecution comes. The church, Christians thrive. It comes in connection to the moral degenerative aspects of the culture. The more the culture degenerates, the more this will take place. So it's circular, and then kingdoms crumble. All that stuff takes place throughout history. When morality gets less and less, the kingdom, the nation begins to fade more and more until they crumble into nothing. But during that time period, persecution rises and the church gets stronger. Romans 5:3. Now we need to understand persecution is going to come, but it's going to make a healthier nation, spiritually speaking, healthier church, healthier spiritual community, healthier saints. Not only that, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, Romans 5:3 says, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Verse 4, perseverance, character, and character, hope. When we suffer for God, it's going to make us strong. That's why we should rejoice. Because if you're going against the wind and you're running, and it just gives you, if it's tough and it's hard and it's difficult and you're going against something and you keep on doing it, keep on keeping on, it just makes you tougher and harder. And when you keep on doing something, that gives you the character, that gives you development. When you're going into the fire, when you're going into the trial, you're remaining faithful to God, even in adversity, that builds in your perseverance, personal development. And that development, that character, strengthens your hope. First Corinthians, a lot of different chapters talk about the beauty of persecution. But let me give one final one. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. Again, same. And please remember, when Romans was being written, persecutions were taking place. The Jews were persecuting the Christians, the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the pagans, and even the Romans were, during the time of the Bible, when it was being written, the Romans were persecuting Christians as well. All you have to do is read about Revelation, Domitian, horrible God, quote, emperor, who was killing Christians. Paul was had his head cut off by Rome. Peter was crucified upside down. Each apostle believed what they were doing, even if it meant death. Are you willing to die for what you believe in? Even if the world calls you a pariah and they try to muzzle you and they try to silence you and they threaten your wife and your kids, threaten your home, your property, you get fired from your job, you get imprisonment, you get death. Would you share Jesus? Too many Christians aren't even sharing him now when we got so many great venues. The internet, social media, it's powerful. The phones we have, the cars we can drive, we got so many ways to reach people and easy ways to do publications. And we're not doing what we should be doing. Are you going to be one of the minorities who steps up and shares Jesus, or one of the majority in the church who prays for opportunities and gives platitudes and says they don't have time because they're busy making money with their secular job and la-di-da-di-da-da? I've heard this from Christians and elders and preachers, believe it or not, that evangelism doesn't matter. That's basically what they're telling me. Are you going to be one of the minorities who actually get their hands dirty and do the work? James chapter 1, verse 2. Final verse. Consider pure joy, my brothers, when you encounter trials of many kinds. Because we're sadists? No. Why should we consider joy when we face trials? Because you know the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Now, allow perseverance to finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Again, when you're going against the grain, when life is hard, when you're going upwind, going into the trial, into the fire, and you keep on going despite that, it makes you stronger inside. Keep on keeping on in your perseverance. That leads to maturity, spiritual depth, spiritual completeness, and growth internally. When you do this, you won't lack things spiritually because you will have been developed through the fire. So whatever fire you may be going through right now, friends make fun of you, peer pressure in high school, college, discouragement because the churches are apathetic, people make fun of your beliefs, you're struggling with the trials, and in America mostly the temptations, the pleasures of our culture, keep on keeping on and know that it's going to get worse, but it has its purpose. We may not see it in our lifetime, but it will come, and it will serve a purpose of kingdom renewal. Thank you for watching. May God bless you. May his face shine upon you. May he give you his grace.